everyone, and thank you for clicking on our YouTube channel. We're the Literacy Volunteers of Harrison County. Today I'm going to look at the respiratory system. This is lesson number 8 in our series of anatomy and physiology lessons. I think this will be the last one. I'm going to start a series on health and wellness. We can talk about things of diet and exercise and different things like that to help you feel healthy and well. So if you like that idea, you can either put some comments on our Facebook page when you see the videos or try to comment below. So today we're going to look at the respiratory system, and it works along with the circulatory system to provide oxygen to your body and to remove carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a byproduct and it's a waste product. That's what we exhale. When you exhale, it's carbon dioxide. Don't get it confused with carbon monoxide, because that's what your car puts forth, and that's what puts the hole in the ozone layer. It helps to regulate also the pH of blood. And pH has to do with the basicity and the alkalinity in your blood, acids versus bases. And portions of it are used for non-vital functions. Things like sensing odors or producing speech or straining during labor pains or coughing. Those things are part of your respiratory system, part of the functions. We're going to look at 2 conducting passages. They're divided in between the lower and the upper conducting passages. And we're going to call them the respiratory tracts. So in our upper respiratory tract, we'll look at the picture over there. We have the nose, it's at the top, the nasal cavity. Then we have the pharynx, and the pharynx is your throat right here. And then the larynx, an extra voice box. Those are part of your upper respiratory tract. Your lower respiratory tract would be your trachea, which is your windpipe, your lungs, and your bronchial tree. Now within the lungs we have alveoli, we have bronchi, and different things like that we're not really going to talk about. That's more of a sophisticated anatomy lesson. So those tracts are open to the outside, so you can breathe in the air, and they're lined with mucus membranes, and little tiny hairs. And in biology we have hair-like structures. We always call those cilia. C-I-L-I-A, they're in your nose, like the little hairs in your nose are cilia. You have the hairs that line those tracts, and what those do is filter out things that might get caught when you breathe in, and they also help to move mucus around because you need to have a lubricated respiratory system. They have the conducting zone's major functions are these 4 things. They provide a route for incoming and outgoing air. They warm and humidify the incoming air. If you've ever been outside on a really cold day and you take a deep breath of that ice cold air, it kind of freezes your lungs. You have mechanisms there that try to warm that up for you because you don't want ice cold air. They also sense odors. We're going to talk about the structures of the nose here in a minute. And they metabolize airborne carcinogens. And our carcinogen is anything that's bad for you. Carcin means bad or cancer causing. Carcinogens, black pepper, UV radiation, different things like that are carcinogenic. Cigarettes. And so we're going to look at what is respiration. And respiration is the sequence of events whereby the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occur between the atmosphere and the cells in your body. So we breathe in oxygen, right, and we're going to exchange that and get carbon dioxide as a byproduct and exhale it. Every 3 to 5 seconds you get nervous impulses. Remember we talked about neurons, and they stimulate your respiratory system, and that's what's called that breathing process or ventilation. And that moves air through a series of passages and into and out of the lungs. And that blood there will transport the gases, and it's a process called diffusion. And then the exchange of gases between the blood and tissue cells is called internal respiration. And finally, the cells will utilize that oxygen for their specific activities. That utilization of oxygen is called cellular metabolism or cellular respiration. And what I've done for you here is written out the equation for cellular respiration. This C6H12O6 is glucose, sugar that you take into your body, your food, plus the oxygen that you breathe in. After it goes through all of those processes, you exhale carbon dioxide and water and this little tiny molecule called ATP, and that's where we get energy. ATP is cellular energy. Everybody in biology knows the mitochondria produce ATP, right? And this equation is actually the opposite of photosynthesis. If we will look at it in this direction and we use carbon dioxide and water, and we get glucose and oxygen, that's photosynthesis. So they're just the same reaction, backward and forward. And so we're going to look at the mechanics of ventilation. We have two processes: inspiration, which is air going into your lungs, and expiration, which is air going out of your lungs. The air moves because of what are called pressure gradients. And those are produced by the contractions of your diaphragm and the thoracic muscles. So when those contract, what they do is they open that space up. It contracts, the thoracic cavity increases in volume. It gets bigger. And then we have a decrease in the interalveolar pressure, and the air goes into your lungs, right? So air is like any other gas, and we talk about this in biology. Molecules like to move from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration. That's a simple process of diffusion. When you talk about osmosis, that occurs over a semi-permeable membrane. Well, this occurs in your lungs. We have all of this air molecules, and they move from high concentration to low concentration. And then we get the recoil, these elastic tissues, and they change that pressure. That's ventilation. The three pressures that we're dealing with are atmospheric pressure. They are outside your body, all around you. That's in the atmosphere. Interalveolar or interpulmonary, that's inside the lungs. Anytime you see pulmo, we always talk about these prefixes, that means lungs. So pulmonary, lungs. And interpleural, that's the pressure within the pleural cavity that surrounds the lungs. When you get pneumonia, sometimes you get that infection in there in your lungs, right? Or in the pleural cavity. And then we'll look at expiration. We let the air out of the lungs during what's called the breathing cycle. Your diaphragm was contracted, now it relaxes, and it allows the recoil of those tissues. It's going to decrease your thoracic volume, which means it kind of pushes like this, and then that pressure in your alveoli will make you exhale. That looks like throwing up, sorry. That make you exhale. So air is pushed out of your lungs. So that's the part of respiration. I wanted to go over just briefly with you some anatomy, since we like to do both during these videos. And this is the nose and its adjacent structure. So we'll look at our skull here when we look at our nose. I've done some drawings for you. There's the front view of this person and the side view. And then here, if you notice the darkened in parts, those are the actual bones, what we're showing you. So the major entrance and exit to the respiratory system is through your nose. So you know, if you get a stuffy nose and a head cold, you have to breathe through your mouth, right? But the major part is your nose. We have the external nose, what we can see from the outside, and then we'll look at the internal. On the external nose, we have these structures, the root, and that's the region between the eyebrows, which would be right here, the root. The bridge is the part of the nose that connects the root to the rest of the nose. Right here is the bridge of your nose, if you look here on this skull. And then we have the dorsum nasi. Dorsi in biology means back. So that's the length of the nose, and we can see that right here, and right here, the length of your nose, which varies from person to person, right? The apex is the tip of your nose, the very tip, that's the apex. The ala is a cartilaginous structure that forms the lateral side of the nasal openings, and you can see the holes here in the skull for the nasal openings. And then this is called the philtrum. That's that surface right here that connects the bottom of your nose to your upper lip. That's called the philtrum, right? And then we're going to look at the internal structures, the skeletal features that are under the skin. If most of this is cartilage, right, on your nose, you can feel the bone if you push right here. That's all you see here. This is the bone. And then you can look up inside and see up inside into the nares. Those are your nose holes, the nares. You have a nasal bone. There are two of those, and they're under the root in the bridge up here, and you can see it's divided by a septum. Maybe you can see. And then we have the nasal septum, and it's formed by cartilage and the ethmoid bone, and there's a very thin, tiny bone in here called the vomeron bone. And I always tell a lot of people this vomeron bone protrudes up into where your brain is located, and they tell you if you take the palm of your hand and you push on someone's nose like that, that vomeron bone can go up into their brain and kill them. So you have to be very careful because that's a little bony structure that's in there. And then we have the lateral walls of the nasal cavity that have projections called the superior, middle, and inferior conchae or concha, either one. And those serve to increase the surface area of our nasal cavity. And what they do is they disrupt the flow of air as it enters the nose, and that causes it to bounce along inside that epithelial tissue, and then that can be cleaned and warmed because you don't want to breathe in dirty air, right? And so we also have those, and with the meatuses, they conserve water to prevent dehydration in your nasal passages. of the nasal epithelium. They trap water during the exhalation process. The last thing we'll look at are what are called the sinuses, and a lot of people are familiar with those. They're called the para on the side of the nasal sinuses, and there's several bones that form the walls of the nasal cavity, and they have air conditioning spaces, and those will warm and humidify the incoming air into your nose. You probably didn't realize there were that many things that were interesting about your nose. But we'd like to thank you for watching our video on the respiratory system. Again, we're the Literacy Volunteers of Harrison County, a nonprofit United Way agency. Please watch our video, like it, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends. Have a good day.